We're going to be rounding out some of this bed here by the Meadow house. And if you recall, this was once a very weedy garden. We had to take up a bunch of geotextile material. I needed extra help with that because I nearly broke my back taking the geotextile material out. And also, just to, if you recall, if you hadn't seen that video, I ended up heavily mulching this bed. So much so that I could actually keep out some of the weeds. I still have to weed. I mean, look at this gargantuan purslane right here. I mean, we could harvest this and eat this as lettuce leaves. It's pretty impressive. I haven't seen one like that. But some of the plants have really started to thrive in here. This is the Spirobolus heterolepsis. Actually, there's one that is already flowering. There's a few that are flowering. So you can see these. That's the inflorescences that are coming up. This one's even bigger. And what's going to happen is as it starts to increase in size, it'll start to taper off and taper over like this. So what I envisioned here, and you can see there's quite a lot in here, what I envisioned is that this would take up most of the space so that these errant weeds that come in, like the plantains and the dandelions and some of the other grasses, will be kind of snuffed out. So I like these plants that kind of form carpets. I'm really impressed with this Verbena bonariensis. Or no, this is not Verbena bonariensis. This is Verbena Bampton. And this is gargantuan, as you could see. And I love this so much. I love like the airy nature of this, that I ended up getting a bunch more. So you can see I just planted some more in that are smaller. So they're not going to get as beefy until next year because that's basically been planted last year. And this is obviously a big bed and I'd like to actually plant more stuff in it. And I thought, well, I got the little rose bug from Lee from Der Rosemeister Nursery, if you saw that video as well. And what I'd like to do is maybe plant 2 roses, and I found 2 roses. Hopefully they'll work in this area because I don't think Lee actually grows these. But one is called Coco Loco. Doesn't look like much now because it's already cut back and we probably won't see blooms until next year, so we'll have to be patient. But when I was looking at roses, I recognized that I really like some of the ones that you wouldn't suspect would be a rose color. So this one has mocha tones, almost like a kind of grayish, brownish color, which is really unusual for a rose. But it has these undertones of lilac and lavender, and as it ages, it starts to change color. So I thought that was really nice. It's a Floribunda type, so I figured we're gonna plant that somewhere in here. And then this one is called Plum Perfect, and it is a true purple color, which is really unusual for roses, also a Floribunda type. And these are relatively, I would say, compact roses, not like super compact, but like I'm talking about like 3 to 4 feet high and wide. So I figured I'd plant those 2 today, and I have to decide which one will go here and which one will go back there. Part of the reason why I brought up the mulch is that I wouldn't mulch these like crazy, because one of the things that roses do not like is sitting in wetness. And I heavily mulch this, and that's great maybe for some plants, but not for all. And so what I'm going to do is probably augment it with some of this soil over here. This is like a vermicompost. And you know, this bed is already like very augmented quite heavily. Like if I had to plant these roses in the native soil, which is like a lot of clay, I don't think it would work. So I'm just going to augment the soil with some of this. I also have some Espoma land and seed compost, and then I'll put roughly around 3 cups of rose tone in the hole. So that's what I'm going to do, but I'm going to dig down in there and I'm going to see how much mulch I put in there. One more thing before I start, like look at how, if you want a good ground cover, this is our native verbena. It's just a cultivar called Homestead Purple, and boy oh boy, it has that spread out like crazy. So if you're looking for a really good ground cover in your bed that's a bit more of a higher ground cover, then I'd go with this. And this is in flower almost all the time. I mean, it's just pretty prolific, and you can see how it starts to grow out this way. So I'm pleased with that. But if you have a small bed and you're looking to plant a lot of different varieties, that probably wouldn't be the best one. But now onto the rose. I mean, what do you think? Do you think the mocha colored one or the purple would be best here? Because I'm gonna do another one over there.
Well, you have purple here, so.
Yeah, should I do the mocha mocha colored?
Do purple next to purple, you give it a little space.
Yeah, okay, then let's do the Coco Loco, because that's gonna be pretty. And I think this garden is gonna end up being a bit more romantic. I'm also thinking of taking up part of the lawn back behind this, and I'm thinking, like, again, a very nice romantic garden, maybe with whites and purples and neutral tones. So let's take this over, and I do want to give it some space. So there's a willow planted here. These are not too hard to take out because they just are plugs, and they got plugged right in there. So let me put this one right here. Yeah, I could see that there's some, well, there's irrigation line in here too. Let me just pop this back in. And there is still quite a bit of clay in here, so I am definitely going to be augmenting this hole. Now, if this were like a native plant, I would not be augmenting the hole so much. Wouldn't be that concerned, but you know, these roses are a little bit more precious or prissy, however you want to describe them. That's actually not that bad. All right, so let's see, this is not that deep of a plant. So what I'd like to do is just make sure that this is scuffed up, and this is obviously, it's actually a pretty good soil right now. It doesn't have too much of that clay, and you can see that it actually breaks up pretty easily. But still, I'm gonna take some of the soil that I have here, augment the hole a little bit. And then what I'm gonna do is take roughly about 3 cups for new planting of rose tone. I'm just gonna mix this in a little bit. Just like that. And you can see that this was planted in a pretty well draining mix as well. You see these big chunks of perlite as well. So you could tell that the grower knows not to overwater this plant. Here's the root ball, looks really good. Nothing's too root bound. And I'm gonna want to set this up a little bit. You don't wanna bury this too much. Maybe early in the season, if it's like still cold, you could mulch around it and then move the mulch back. But we're in summer right now, although it feels a little bit like autumn. I mean, we've just had such a good summer. I mean, everyone's complaining about, oh, this is too hot or whatever, but honestly, we've had the perfect summer since we've been here. So I'm just gonna bury the tag in there in case I ever forget what this rose is. I'm just gonna pull this down. This area didn't look like I heavily mulched it as much as some of the other areas. I'm gonna also water this in. You could, before you cover the hole, you could water it in, or you could water it in afterwards. I'm gonna water it in afterwards. So if you add that compost to the top, it's almost like a slow release fertilizer. So the rose tone will act as like a fertilizer inside the hole, and then as you put the compost on top and you slowly water it in, then that will serve as a slow release fertilizer there as well. And we'll see new growth on this for sure. I mean, this will start to put out some leaves. It's not gonna stay like a green stick like this. In fact, some of the reviews that I saw for some of these plants was how quickly they started to put out some new growth. So I'll water them in afterwards because I want to plant the other one. So again, this is the Coco Loco. And you could imagine 3 to 4 feet, it's gonna get like this. And these are plants that you could actually, you know, clip and put into a bouquet. So that'll be nice as well. All right, let's go with this one. Okay, so I think we determined that right around here, this area gets a little weedy as you can see some of the grass moving in. I kind of petered out on the cardboard in this area, so that's what I'm kind of tackling with. But the more I plant, the less I'm gonna have to deal with that kind of stuff. So, ooh, look at this, all this mycelium right there. Now this feels a little bit more mulchy over here. So I'm definitely gonna augment this hole so it's not sitting in mulch. The problem is if it's sitting in mulch all the time, then it's just gonna retain too much moisture and it will likely rot the roots. Okay, so there is some soil down here. This is great to plant in though. Some rope. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is, again, get some more of this vermicompost that we have. Lovely, lovely vermicompost. Oh, there's a little frog. Look at him, he's so tiny. Look at that guy. So many frogs down here. And then again, roughly 3 cups of the rose tone. So it has biotone in it, acts as a nice fertilizer and has some of that helpful bacteria that you naturally find in the soil, and it's just going directly right into this hole. Take this out. It comes out very easily. Nice root structure. I'll rip this tag off, I'll put that in there. There you go, face it out. Let's compress the soil a little bit, just to get some of the air pockets out and see how much soil we need on top. I'm gonna add some land and sea compost to the top of this as well. And once we water that in, between that and the rose tone will be a nice, healthy meal. And all this sun, of course. It's really nice compost. I'm gonna have to come in here and get all these grasses and dandelions out. A really helpful tip too is a lot of our garden beds are not on a plane. What's really helpful is if you actually do berm them up quite a bit, and you can see that this is bermed up quite a bit. The plants that want a bit more drier feet, you could plant up higher on the berm, and the ones that might want a little bit more water, of course, naturally water will flow down the hill, not necessarily up. So when it flows down the hill, some of those plants that actually need that extra water, especially if you're in an area that is got a lot of rain, then you want to plant those wet-loving plants, or ones that thrive in wet conditions, or rain garden plants will plant more on the downhill. With these roses, I'm going to plant more on the upslope because, like I said, they don't really like to have their feet too much in water. That will kill them right away. All right, that's it. I'm going to water them in and we'll call it a day.
We'll be planting up more gardens at Flock throughout the summer and fall to slowly turn this space into a botanic oasis, so stay tuned for those transformations. Now 10% of our Google AdSense revenue is reinvested back into community projects here in the Finger Lakes, and that's matched by our partners over at Espoma Organic. So your support really goes a long way. So be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notifications button if you'd like to support. We'll see you in the next video.